Microsoft Excel 2003 data filtering. We've looked at several ways for us to change the way that we view the information in our Microsoft Excel spreadsheets. Well, here we're going to learn about the art of filtering the data. In this video, we're going to take a look at how we can filter our data by using either the auto filter and even how we can do some advanced filtering based upon criteria that we specify. Data everywhere. Anytime you open up a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet and you have your mounds upon mounds of data, it can get a little overwhelming. We've already shown you one way of organizing and outlining and grouping your data. That's with grouping and outlining. We even saw how you can hide rows or columns, and that can also kind of, make it a little easier to see what it is that you're looking at. But let me open up our Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, our example program today, Data Filtering 1. And let me show you how I can not only go and select all these rows or columns, I should say, and then hide them, or select these rows and hide them, or select certain groups of data and then group them based upon the day of the week, or do subtotals based upon this information. That's all part of grouping and outline. And notice every time I do something like that, I'm selecting what it is that's going to appear by hand and clicking on it. Here we can use data filtering, and it will look at the data that's contained within this column or the rows or the range of cells, and it will filter based on what criteria I give it. It can do anything from a top 10 to a custom list. Let's see how this works. Now, I can select anywhere in this range of data, and anytime you select here and I turn on filtering, auto filtering, it will then say, oh, I notice there's a whole bunch of columns together. I'll go ahead and auto filter the whole thing. Whereas if I scroll over here and I select on this one, there's nothing on either side here. It's just this particular column. It will only auto filter this column. Let me show you how that works. I'm going to click on data because I'm doing something with my data. It is data filtering. And one of the options that we have here is filter. And I can turn on auto filter. Now when I turn on auto filter, it's going to produce a little filter drop down arrow. Notice that it only does it for this particular column. So let me turn this off again, turn off auto filter, and now I'm going to come over here and select Sunday. So I'm in this big huge range of columns here, and I click on data. This time it's going to say auto filter, and wow, see every single column from the date, day of the week, scroll over until it ends right here on the 8 o'clock hour there. And if you see this, it says the totals are going to be what? They're not going to be filtered because this column is off by itself, so it's not going to do that. Now when we look at this and say, all right, if I wanted to go in here and perhaps filter on the days of the week, I only want to see, let me click on this, I only want to see Friday or Monday or Saturday or Sunday. Let me go ahead and click on, Friday's always a good day, so I click on Friday. It will show me all of the days of the week that are Friday and the corresponding data in those rows. That's the 6th, then it's the 13th, the 20th, and the 27th of the month of January are Fridays, and I can see what my sales were on those Fridays. Fairly consistent between this Friday and this Friday. Wow, that was pretty good. And then it changes a little bit, and we can see how this works. Now, when we do this, all we are doing is we are filtering the results of what's showing up here. Notice my totals, my formula is still the same, C6 through C37. I'm only showing, however, row 11, 18, 25, and 32 because that's where the Fridays were. What if I wanted to just see what the subtotal was for my Friday's sales at 8 o'clock? How would I do that? Well, I could go ahead over here and I could create a new formula and just insert a function and then select this cell, this cell, this cell, and this cell is the ones that I want to add up, and maybe put a number down here for Friday's sales. I could do that, or I could subtotal and use the groupings. But instead, watch this nifty little feature. I can select this range because this is the range of my 8 o'clock in the morning sales, 1190 through 1198, and look down here at the bottom on my status bar and my status. sum equals 4,713. This is the subtotal, or the sum of this range of cells. So I can, instead of creating a formula, if I just want to see something real quick, I can just select the range and it will show this information down to me right here. Very nice. Because think about it, if I decided to do this, I select these columns, or in this column, this information, and I click on the auto sum, and it's going to produce my little formula down here. Watch what happens. It then adds it to this particular total. Well, wait a minute. I don't want to add that total because that's going, doubling up on it. So what I can do is, let me go ahead and delete this. In fact, it even says, hey, you've added additional numbers adjacent to it. Oh, oops, sorry about that. So let me go ahead and delete that. And then it goes back to normal, my 39,549, or the total for my 8 o'clock throughout all the days, because this is a formula. So this does not change even though I'm doing data filtering. So what else can we do with data filtering? Well, quite a bit. In this case, we just done a simple filtering based upon the day of the week, and we chose Friday as our choice. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the down arrow here and say all. So that way we can see all of the data that we have. And we still can go into individual times. We could see, for example, let's say I wanted to see what are the top 10 sales at 10 o'clock. Okay, well, when I do that, I click on the down arrow, I click top 10, and it gives me the top 10 items. I can also do percent here. I can do the top 10% if I want. I can also change how much. I can do the top 3, I can do the top 5, I can do the top 20, or however many I want to. For example, let's say I want to do top 5. I can even do the bottom 5, the ones, coming up versus top down. So if I say I want the top 5 items here on 10 o'clock. So we can see that 10 o'clock, and the way I can tell is if you look real carefully, notice it's the blue. It changed from black to blue. That means this is the row that is being affected by the current filter. 789, 412, 602, 986, and 499 are the top 5 items that I have here for my sales at 10 o'clock. So there's different things that we can do with this type of filtering. So let me go ahead and click all, and it will set it up. Now if I want to turn filtering off, I can just select anywhere here, click on the data, click filter, and turn the auto filter off. And then I'm set up and ready to go. Now remember, I showed you how if I select here, it'll select all of this and start doing the filtering. But if I go over here on the totals and I select it, and I say data, filter, auto filter, it will only do this particular column. Now I want to show you one interesting thing about this. Let's say I wanted to do some custom filtering on this particular column. And I want to find out all of the sales that are greater than, we'll say, $5,500 in sales for that particular, or at the end of the day, it's going to be more than $5,500. Well, the way I can do that is by clicking on the down arrow and clicking custom. When I click custom, it's going to say, all right, what do you want? To show the rows where what? It equals, does not equal, is greater than or equal to, is less than or equal to, something that begins with, maybe I want the days that begin with W. Well, that'd only be Wednesday, but or S, that'd be Saturday and Sunday. Does not begin with. It ends with. I have many different choices if it contains certain things. And then I can even use like a question mark to represent a single character. So I put question mark, A, or a star, any series of characters. Kind of like when you do search on a file in your Microsoft Windows operating system, where you can use the wildcard, the little asterisk, to represent a series of characters that are contained there. So let's say, and remember I said I want all of the sales that are more than $5,500. And so I can type in an amount, or I can even choose from the existing amounts, data that are in the range. Well, I want to say anything that's $5,500. So $5,500. And I can then say, I can, add another argument here that it's greater than or equal to a certain another amount. Or, in other words, it will pick this or whatever statement I make here. So I'll just leave it at and leave this one blank, and I'm going to click OK. If you look, in this column now, there are no totals that are less than 5,500. Everything is greater than 5,500. You've got, in fact, 55, 53. Well, guess what? That's 53 more than 5,500, and so it's going to be included here. Again, notice that my formula is still going to be a summarization of everything that you see here. So that hasn't changed at all. However, the one nifty thing about it is that, again, I can select, if I want to see out of all the numbers over 5,500, what are the total sales combined? It would be 71,601. So I've come in and I've customized my filtering for this particular column. And again, once I'm done, I can come roll up here and click all, and it will return me back to where I was before. So the next thing that we want to do is show you advanced filtering. We've already shown you the auto filtering when we clicked on the data, and here's our auto filter, but I'm sure a lot of you spied that advanced filter and were thinking, I wonder what that's all about. No problem, we can do that. In fact, we'll go ahead and open up a new, as we can see here, I got an advanced filtering example file that we're going to use. And let's say we want to choose the criteria of what we want to filter. That's what advanced filtering does. I mean, the auto filter kind of gives us certain options. We can customize like greater than or equal to in certain things. Here we can go just about anywhere within our data, pick out a few things and filter based upon that, whether it's greater than or equal to or does not equal to, all those things. The first thing you're going to want to do, and I prepared it just a little bit. I have, let me go ahead and bold these titles. So here's my titles for my columns, my column headers here. I got a category of the instruments that I'm selling at maybe my instrument shop. So I got pianos, guitars, strings, and horns. Here's the name of the salespeople. I got James and Dan, Jeremy and Wanda. You know, our familiar names of our salespeople, and then the amount of sales that they have. And you know, let's say I have a page after page of this, and I want to start filtering on who sells guitars, or what are the guitars, or I only want to see data that relates to guitars being sold. Whenever you do advanced filtering, there are two things that need to be in place. One is the data range, or the data you're going to use, and the other is the criteria range. Now it looks kind of strange, but I've created up here a mirror image of my column headers down here, category, name, and sales. This area right here, and you want to make sure you have at least three of the cell or rows that are empty and there's nothing in them, and so you can put in the top row the category here, and then you can put a row of criteria range and another row down here, and then you want some space between them so that way the Excel spreadsheet knows that this is the criteria range and it's not bumped up against any of the data, because it will start, remember, whenever you select anything like here and you start saying filter, it says, oh, you want everything that's connected to me. Now, don't do that. So here we're going to say I want to choose or create my criteria range right above here. And by the way, that's a minimum of 3 blank rows. You can do more than 3 like I did. I did up to 5 here. So the first thing you're going to do is once you've filled in the top, and by the way, these need to be spelled the exact same as your column headers down here. If they don't, it will not work. That would be a bad thing. And then right below that, remember, we said we wanted to do guitars, so let's go ahead and go under a category, and I'm going to type in the criteria range for this particular category, or for my category. In this case, I hit the equal. Oh, wait a minute. Chris, I thought we were doing the criteria range, not a function. Well, remember, it is a function of your advanced filtering, so you have to put the equal in. And then I put in a quotes, which means I'm going to be looking for this particular entry. And I want to say that it's equal to guitars. And then I put in the end of quotes. Now I can say not equal to, I can say greater than. If I was using maybe numbers down here, I want all the sales that are greater than. And then I could make a second line here. Let me click off of it. Now see, it says, oh, you want to look for something in the category of guitars. And I could also say, well, and I don't want anything that equals this. And I can come over to sales and make another criteria range. But we'll just stick with the simple one here. So I've created my criteria range that I want, and I always need to make sure that at least one blank line separates, and I know I'm harping on this, but it will mess you up if you don't do it. One blank, in this case I got several, between your criteria range and your data range. So now I want to do some filtering. So I can click on here in pianos, and it's part of my data range, and I come up to data, I click on filter, and I say advanced filter. So I click on advanced filter, and it gives me a choice. I can either filter what's in place right here and just, it'll put the information once it's done filtering right here in the same area, or I can copy to another location. If I want to filter this data to another worksheet, maybe I want to put it over here on sheet 3, and I want to copy that information so it appears a little bit differently. I can do that if I want. But for our illustration, we'll just stick with showing it right here for you. Filter the list in place. The list range, and it automatically populates, and that's why you have to have that blank row here. It automatically populates all of this data that you want to filter. But I need to specify where the criteria range is. So it's up here, so I click on my dialog collapse so I can choose where the criteria range is. And very important, you need to select not only the criteria range, but also the category, the column header above it. If you don't, it's not going to work. You're just selecting that. It's going to be looking for underneath that column of equal guitars. So I bring this back and I say, all right, I've got it on my sheet 1, and it is an absolute reference. Notice I got my dollar signs in front. When you do an advanced filter, it's an absolute reference. It's not going to be relative and change. I click OK, and ta-da, here it is. It went ahead and filtered in place and only looked for the items that are with guitars. And so I can see that James and Dan sold some guitars. James sold probably one guitar, a really nice one for $689, and Dan, he sold the upper model, and it was $701. And so by using the advanced filter, we can specify the criteria, what we're looking for, and either have it filtered in place, like we saw here, or copy it over to another location. Yet another example of how we can be very specific in our Microsoft Excel 2003. We can filter our data utilizing the auto filter, and that's based on things like the top 10 of a row or column. We can customize that for a greater than or less than. But if you want to be even more specific with your criteria, you can use advanced filtering, where we can specify literally certain words, ranges of words, where they're located, and we can copy that information into a separate area by using the copy to functionality. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.